For those of you that might be wondering why I didn't do an Impact review last week, it's very simple. It kind of slipped through the cracks. It got to a point in time of the week where I was just like, there's no point in me doing it anymore. I don't really feel like doing it anymore, and I'm just not going to do it anymore. As far as my thoughts on last week's show, really quickly, I thought the show started off well and then eventually descended into the abyss. Plain and simple. I thought the finish to the main event was particularly screwy. Are they setting up a future MVP heel turn? Why in the fuck would he take the handcuffs out? Anyways, as much as I really ended up not liking last week's show, this week's show kind of was a flip side. I thought it started off at the very beginning kind of, what? Kind of dumb. And then it got a whole lot better as the night progressed and ended up being a really, really good show. And I had a lot of fun watching Impact this week. As I mentioned, I thought this show started off very slowly. This whole opening segment, at least the portion between MVP and Magnus and Abyss, I thought was very bad. And it was just full of logic fails and plot holes. Just really lazy writing, in my opinion. And here's what I mean. Abyss is aligned with Magnus. But now, all of a sudden, Abyss is no longer a TNA contracted wrestler. What do you want to bet he's listed on the Impact roster on the website? Just throwing that out there. Also, he's under contract to Magnus, but MVP has the power to book Abyss in matches? One, why would he have any power to do that if Abyss is not a TNA contracted wrestler? Number two, wouldn't that open up a whole bunch of potential legal issues if you were putting somebody in a match on your show if they're not legally under contract to you? Wouldn't that open you up to a whole legal can of worms? Number three, if Abyss is there aligned with Magnus and not part of the TNA roster itself, wouldn't that mean that you could technically classify Abyss as being a trespasser and meaning that you could evict him from the freaking building? It's the same type of shit you would have thought with the Aces and Eights. If they're not actually on the TNA roster, why are they allowed to come in? Why haven't the cops surrounded the place and thrown them out every single week until you got rid of them? Same thing here with the Abyss. There were just all types of logic fails and plot holes that you could drive Mack trucks through with this opening segment is the point. At least until we got to Eric Young. And Eric Young really saved this opening segment for me and really started this show off on a really good trajectory. Now, I know back at the lockdown review, I sat there and said, oh boy, EY getting a title shot, and oh boy, feuding with the Abyss. Here's what I'll say, is that I've been a fan of EY for a few years now. I think they've done some dumb shit with him, yes indeed. But his promo made a ton of sense. He was on point. He was on the money. He said exactly what a guy like him should say. And it tied back to the whole thing that MVP had said before. Motivate, validate, and participate. So it was actually, you go from at the beginning where there's incredibly lazy writing to you get to this point here, and EY saving the show with some really good writing and some really good promo work. And he's going to get Samoa Joe later on in the show. And EY wants a shot because he feels like he's deserved that shot. I'm all for giving a guy, I guess, one of those Cinderella type of runs, especially at March Madness time. You would think this would be something every year that the WWE and TNA would actually latch onto, is the fact that, holy shit, March Madness is going on. One of the things that happens is you have these Cinderella teams, these big upsets, and these companies, by and large, completely ignore that and completely don't hop on the bandwagon with that. So fuck it. Why not give Eric Young a title shot? Why not? Especially if it's going to be part of a four-way. Now, do I still want to see him continue to feud with the Abyss? Not really. But hey, he was on the money here. He said the type of shit that I felt he should have said in this spot and really helped save this opening segment overall and really, I think, started the ball rolling on a really good episode this week. One thing you've got to give TNA a lot of credit for is apparently they are very behind the American Wolves. They are behind Davey Richards. They are behind Eddie Edwards. I think this is a perfect spot for them. They're perfect as a tag team here on the TNA roster. They definitely bring some much-needed talent to that TNA tag team division. It's a shame that they're not the freaking champs right now. But hey, they've been on board with these guys. They're pushing these guys well. They have them beat Abyss and Magnus here. Hey, you know what? If you're a fan of the Wolves, you have to, I would think, be a fan, other than maybe the fact that they're not the champs right now. You have to be a fan of the way that TNA has featured these guys and presented these guys and booked these guys so far. They're really making them feel like a big deal, and that's a good thing for TNA. So after last week, you knew you were going to get some type of follow-up with Angelina Love and Velvet Sky about Angelina Love attacking Madison Rayne backstage, and you kind of had a feeling it was going to set up to Angelina Love saying, you're either going to choose me or you're going to choose Madison Rayne, Velvet. You decide. And maybe this was predictable for a lot of us, and we knew where this was going to go. But that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. Madison Rayne versus Angelina Love, you had the sense the whole time that Velvet Sky is going to turn on Madison Rayne, and she's going to align with Angelina Love, and the beautiful people will be back together again. Fine. I've been sitting here pissing and moaning forever that we need new faces in the Knockouts division. Well, Angelina Love's not a new face, but by God, put the beautiful people back together. Put Velvet Sky back in her better role as a heel, along with Angelina Love, and you have at least in the short term injected this Knockouts division with some much needed life. And now you've got potentially two different people for a Madison Rayne to feud with over that Knockouts title. I'm okay with this. I'll deal with it. I'm so glad, so glad that they have just decided to say, fuck it, and they have totally reset Bully Ray's character. I'm very happy that they've done that because it was needed. It was getting to the point of being stupid, and it was just unnecessary. There's no reason to have him do the shit that he was doing. It was just dumb. And there are certain times and there are certain examples of where I'm okay with ignoring logic, and I am okay with ignoring things because it's just necessary and you just need to totally reboot and reset. And doing it here with Bully Ray is a good call. One thing I do like sometimes that TNA does, I feel better than a WWE, is they can take an issue and make it feel more personal. They can get you to connect on a more deep basis, or on a deeper basis, if you will. And Bully Ray, Bobby Roode, this is going to be a fun feud. You know, and this whole thing with the tables, you want to see me put them through 1 table, 2 tables, 3 tables, 4 tables, 5 tables. And I also like the fact how Bobby Roode doesn't really back down from a Bully Ray. He's not afraid of a Bully Ray. So now here you've got an ass-kicking babyface, a necessary character reboot, and at the same time you've got a heel that talks shit and isn't afraid to back it up and isn't afraid. He'll go down and he'll stare down a Bully Ray. He'll go at a Bully Ray. That's refreshing. This is going to be hopefully another good feud for Bobby Roode, and finally, for the first time in a while, actually, a good feud involving Bully Ray. I'm looking forward to it. It was a really big night to me for an Eric Young because not only did he shine at the beginning of the show and really, I think, piece together and save that opening segment, but he came out here and he had a good spotlighted match with a Samoa Joe. Now, they didn't sit there and defy all logic or reason and imply to us that an Eric Young could beat a Samoa Joe one-on-one straight up. You know, he lost to Samoa Joe, but he put up a hell of a fight. And not only that, when shit came to get and Samoa Joe applied that rear naked choke, Eric Young didn't tap. He passed out. And you could even kind of see the way Samoa Joe sold this. He's kind of like, you know, that's a badass dude. I can respect this dude. They did a lot here in one show to make Eric Young look more credible than I think he ever has at any point in time in the history of Impact Wrestling. And again, this is a guy that's been there for a long time. As he mentioned at the beginning of the show, all the different things he did over the years to entertain people. Fuck it, I'm okay with him getting a title shot. What the hell? Why not? I'll see how he does next week, and I'll see what they do with him. And at this point in time, would I be all that pissed if Eric Young became the new TNA World Heavyweight Champion? No, not really. Would I be pissed if it didn't happen? No, not really. Have I read the spoilers ahead of time to know what happens one way or another? No, I haven't. So please, please respect me and the others watching this video. Try not to spoil what's coming next week because I don't want to know until it actually happens. So we got an appearance by the King of the Night, Kenny King. Fuck MVP. How could you not book him on this show, damn it? Well, it sounds like he'll be wrestling next week, and that's a good thing. It's kind of interesting to me how with Impact now, they're almost setting it up like every 2 weeks is a big show in its own way. If you know what notice, you have a big show in terms of an Impact, then the next week sets up to the following week's Impact, then you start, and then da-da-da. And I'm okay with that. It's good to see Kenny King back in TNA. I wonder what King of the Night is actually going to be and whether they're going to ultimately push him long-term as a babyface or if they're going to start off with him as a face and then quickly turn him heel. I don't know. Are they going to send him after the X Division champion who didn't appear this week at all? I don't know. I hope so. As I mentioned a little bit earlier in this review, one thing I think at times that TNA does a much better job of with WWE is making issues feel deeper, making issues feel more personal, and getting us to connect on a different level with those feuds and rivalries than what a WWE will do. And the Gunner versus James Storm is another clear-cut example of this. This feud, this story between these two, friends to foes to friends again to really foes, has been outstanding and been very well done. And this match here, that was the main event match of Impact, another really good match between these two. I think every bit as good as the match at Lockdown. Actually, probably a little bit better. I thought the finish was a little bit better, frankly, for the match itself. I wonder how much this has really helped Gunner, though. Does this make him a top guy in TNA, feuding with a guy like James Storm? Does this really hurt a James Storm long term? What are you going to do with James Storm as a heel now that he's done with Gunner? Those are things that I'm curious to see. But in terms of this feud, I think it's been very well done, and I've enjoyed it tremendously. Tremendously. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my favorite part of Impact this week was EC3 and Rockstar Spud and their mission, their quest to go find Willow where he's at and get him out of there, so to speak. This is so fucking fun. Rockstar Spud is awesome. Ethan Carter III was awesome. Even when Willow fucking attacked Ethan Carter III, they just kind of threw the umbrella on top of him. See, it's this little shit here that you could do to have some fun in professional wrestling. You did it all throughout the night. It built up to one big climactic kind of finish at the end, but it wasn't overpowering to the show. Man, this was a lot of fun. And man, this ended up being a really fun, interesting episode of Impact for me. I don't care what the ratings said. I don't care if they went under a 1.0 this week. I don't care about any of that. This was a good show. They finished off one very personal feud. They're establishing the Wolves as a big-time presence in the company. They are making an Eric Young feel like a viable world championship contender. You've got Bully Ray, Bobby Roode. You're doing crazy fun things with Ethan Carter III and Rockstar Spud. You've now turned the beautiful people heel, which is necessary and needed to happen. You've introduced the King of the Night, Kenny King, back to the TNA audience. A lot of good things this week. If TNA could do more of this stuff every week, my tone about this company in general would become a lot more positive in a great big hurry.